good, everybody? It's your boy Billy. We back at it again with another sample tutorial. We're gonna take another look at how I would make a Leon Thomas type sample. Let's go ahead and get into it. Starting off, we have a C sharp major ninth, going into an inverted A major ninth, C sharp at the base, then into a D sharp minor seventh, into a D sharp diminished seventh, and we run those chords back. For my top notes, my intro melody, just kind of walking up and doing the same thing in the second half. For my first sound, I'm using a Sky Keys preset, soft piano. Let's hear what this sounds like. And as you see, for my main section, I drop the top notes and I just keep the main chords going. Let's take a look at the mixer track for my Sky Keys preset. Right now, I'm just taking out the low end, throwing a dip in the low mids, compressing the sound, and throwing some reverb on there. I'm also putting it into a chorus bus, and then also my instrument bus, which I'll go over later. For my next sound, taking a look at this pad from Omnisphere. I really just liked it for the intro, debating on putting it back into the main section, but for now it's just gonna stay in my intro. And the mixer settings for this, again, just taking out the low end, doing some dips where I thought it was a little bit harsh, and also compressing the sound. The next instrument in my intro is the strings, which just mirrors the keys in the beginning. It's another Omnisphere preset. Let's take a listen. Mixer settings for this is another EQ, just taking out the low end and adding a compressor. The next sound in my main section is keys from Analog Labs. Let's take a listen. And the mixer presets for this, another EQ, taking out some low end and doing a dip in the low mids and also throwing on a compressor. The next sound in my main section are tied together. One pad from Analog Labs, another from Sky Keys. They both sound like this. Both the same chords, just one's up an octave and the other one's down an octave. Throwing on some codec to get some distortion. Doing a little bit of EQ. Compressing the sound. Taking out some of the low end that codec added again. Throwing on some vintage reverb and also some panning effect just to get some movement from this pad sound. Now let's take a look at the vocal selection. I have an intro and some vocals in my main section. Let's go ahead and take a listen to the intro. So really quickly, that first main vocal at the top, throwing on some EQ, adding a compressor, and throwing on some rev spring reverb. I'm also throwing this into a chorus slash reverb bus where I'm kind of heavily putting on some some chorus, and I'm also throwing on some reverb again. And this one is also going into my instrument bus. For the second sample, vocal sample in this one, just taking out some lows and a little bit of highs and just compressing the sound. This one is also going to the chorus and reverb bus. Now let's listen to the rest of the vocal selection in my main sounds. All All right, for the last two sounds, the vocal sample in the middle, throwing on some EQ, kind of highlighting where I want the vocal range to sit into, throwing on some alter boy for some chorus effect, and I'm also throwing on a compressor this one, and I'm also routing this to my chorus and reverb. This final sound, throwing on a compressor and also putting this into a chorus and reverb bus. And the main reason that I'm having a bus for my chorus and reverb is just also, one, to not have the same effects on each channel, and also two, doing it this way acts like a gluing effect. They're all going to the same channel and coming out as one blended sound into my instrument bus, where everything gets glued all together with all my main sounds. If you want to learn more about how I kind of go through my sound selection for vocal samples and how I cut them, I'll put the card to the video up now. Moving on to the guitar sound and another element, let's take a listen. All right, so for the wah sound in the beginning, just throwing on some EQ, throwing on a compressor, adding some reverb and delay to really kind of let the tail ring out, and also some pan man. For the glockenspiel sound, here throwing on some alter board for some chorus, the chorus tune for some more chorus effect, throwing on a compressor, and lastly a reverb. I really wanted some of these sounds to really be affected and kind of sit in the mix in a different and special way. And lastly, for this guitar lead, we're just throwing on some EQ to take out the low end, raising up the highs a little bit. Felt like it needed a little bit more brightness, throwing on a chorus, compressing the sound, and lastly a reverb. Quickly going over my textures, nothing really serious here. EQing the sound and compressing it just so it fits nicely in the mix. All right, taking a look at my instrument bus, I'm just kind of taking out some of the low end so it doesn't compete with my bass. Throwing on a Pultec EQ, compressor to glue everything together, and just some fruity soft clipper. All right, let's move on to the bass sound that I played in. All right, for the bass effects, I'm taking out some of the high and also just trying to clean it up so it doesn't sound too muddy with this EQ. Throwing on this CLA bass amp, and I'll let you guys hear what it sounds like with it and without it. So you see, it really kind of brings out the sound of the bass really to the front, and I just like that sound. For my parallel compression, obviously just a compressor, and then my bass bus, throwing on some Pultec EQ, another compressor to glue it all together, and then a fruity soft clipper. All right, let's move on to the final element, which is our drums. Let's go ahead and take a listen. All right, pretty nice drum sample that I kind of created right there. For my kick, just EQing it, I felt like there was a pretty nasty sound in this kind of low mid section I wanted to take out, and also just making sure it doesn't compete with my bass guitar too much, and then I'm compressing that sound. For my hats, really didn't want it to be too bright. I wanted to kind of bring it more in line with the mix with this EQ and compression. Kind of the same thing for my snare drum. Just compressing it down, throwing in some reverb so it can sound a little bit wet. For my overhead high, same thing with the hi-hats. Didn't want it to be too bright. Just wanted it to kind of pop when I needed it to. So throwing on this compressor and some reverb as well. All right, so for my drum sample, doing a few different things. I have a drum room where I'm just throwing in some reverb, and you can see I think everything except the kick goes into this drum room, just to kind of add some ambiance to the drum sample. I'm also doing some parallel compressions with my drums using this SSLG bus compressor. And lastly, my drum bus has a EQ, just kind of brighten the top end a little bit. Pultec EQ, another SSLG bus compressor, this Abbey Road J37 tape stereo, just to kind of mess with the saturation a little bit, like how that sounds. And lastly, a Fruity Soft Clipper. All right, now that we've gone over all of the elements, let's take a look at my master channel effect bus. Starting off with some Pultec EQ, using SSLG bus compressor, tape J37, and then lastly a parametric EQ and another Fruity Soft Clipper. All together, we have this final product. Alright, it's been your boy Billy. I hope y'all enjoyed this week's sample walkthrough. Let me know what you guys want to hear next. I'm out.